Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I post episodes twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays on whatever strikes my fancy. So welcome. Today's episode is especially for my younger audience, for the teenagers. My analytics tell me that there is a small number of them now listening in, so I hope this reaches many of you. It's also for the adults, a reminder as we raise and inspire the future. It's an episode about the cruelty of young people, about how our actions and sometimes our inaction cause so much pain and misery in a world already teeming with it. Once again, we travel back to my high school days, and I want to tell a story of two young girls that I went to school with. We'll call them Evelyn and Molly to respect their privacy. I met Evelyn in Senior 1. We would have been around 13 or 14 at the time, and we were assigned to the same stream. As often happens on the first day, we were asked to introduce ourselves. As you can expect, a nerve-wracking experience for young girls meeting each other for the first time. I remember Evelyn standing up to introduce herself, and that when she spoke, it was with a thick accent common to Western Uganda. While most of us came from schools within the capital city, a few of the girls were the cream of the crop of the rural schools that they came from. Evelyn was one of those girls, and when she spoke, it was with nervousness, but also a determined and bold volume. She also had a highly unusual first name, or Christian name as we call it, and combined with her pronunciation in a sort of sing-song voice, struck us as hilarious and had us bursting out laughing. I can't imagine what it must have felt like for Evelyn in that moment. I imagine she might have felt embarrassed and perhaps confused. It must have hurt, but there was a certain spirit about her that I don't think that moment alone would have caused any lasting damage. Unfortunately, that's not where the story ends, because of course it takes a while for a new group to get to know each other. And so every time Evelyn introduced herself, pronouncing her unusual name in that sing-song voice with a thick accent, the class erupted in laughter. Every single time. And it wasn't just in class. It was in the dormitory, at lunchtime in the mess, on the sports field, while we did our laundry. It became a bit of a chant. This went on for a while, and I can't remember if the teachers ever intervened. They might have done. And perhaps maybe the teasing or bullying, we should call it, even lessened over time. But one term, still in that first year of high school, Evelyn left and she never returned. Rumors flew. She had come from a rural town. Perhaps she couldn't afford the fees. Perhaps her parents decided to keep her back. Or perhaps the bullying became too much. I look back on those days with a great deal of shame. I don't remember if I ever chanted the song or if I laughed. I probably did. But I do remember that I did nothing. I certainly did nothing to intervene. The second girl we shall call Molly. She was also in my class, though in a different stream. A dark-skinned, pretty girl from the north. Being in different streams and dormitories, we barely interacted, but I could tell even from a distance that she had the sweetest temperament. She always had a smile and a kind word for everyone, and being a Christian, was always offering to pray with someone or other about some problem. Fast forward 5 years to HSC or upper high school, and Molly became gravely ill. I can't remember exactly when I first took notice, but eventually saw that she had lost a lot of weight and her beautiful dark skin had started to develop white spots all over. We were all concerned, of course, but at that age, you're not really thinking about life-altering events. And so Molly continued to sicken. Sometimes she would leave school for weeks at a time and eventually return looking even sicker. One day she returned after a long absence and we really began to understand how serious things were. she was wasting away before our very eyes and in a great deal of pain. Honestly, she should have been in a hospital or at home at the very least, but we began to understand that actually she seemed to have nowhere to go. That the school dormitory, surrounded by her friends, seemed to be her only option, her only solace. Sometimes she was admitted to the school infirmary, but I suspect because of the seriousness of her condition, the school nurse tried to send her home. I never fully understood what her home situation was, but she kept returning to school and spent weeks in the dormitory with her friends doing what they could for her. But the truth is, she was dying. One day we returned to dorm and Molly was gone. Eventually we learned that the school authorities could not allow her to pass away on school grounds, and so I believe, although I can't be absolutely sure, that she was sent home. A few weeks later, we learned that she had passed on from kidney failure, and I remember that we grieved because there hadn't been a gentler or a kinder soul than Molly among us. I often think about Evelyn and Molly. I hope that Evelyn went on to a reasonably happy life. Perhaps I will never know whether our treatment forced her out, but I feel deeply ashamed of it. She was obviously brilliant to have surmounted the challenges of studying in a rural school and making it to one of the top schools in the country. What if she had been able to stay? If she didn't return because of a lack of school fees, what if we would have been able to help? It was a government-subsidized school, so our fees were actually quite affordable. What if we had fundraised, campaigned for a bursary? What might her life have been like? Perhaps she didn't return for other reasons entirely. We may never know. I think often about Molly. What if one of us had been woke enough to say, this just isn't good enough. Let's find someone who can help. Let's fundraise money for hospice care so that her final days could at least be spent with some relief from the pain. I look back at my 17-year-old self and wonder whether there is something more that I could have done. I will never know, but I regret it bitterly. And so, for all the teenagers listening, I ask you to take a moment to reflect. You are young and probably feel powerless, but there is always something you can do to make the world a slightly better place. With the technology available now, especially social media, it's possible to change someone's life for the better if you're just paying a little bit of attention. Wherever you are, Evelyn, I hope your life is tolerably happy. And Molly, may you continue to rest in peace. Thanks for listening. Give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter at @Kentaro, that's ESSKENTARO, to continue the conversation. I hope you'll be back for the next one. Goodbye for now.